In 1788, Ranavalona was born, niece to the king of Imerina. From a young age, she displayed an iron will and a thirst for power in a kingdom fraught with intrigue. She married the progressive King Radama I, who opened Madagascar to European influence, modernizing the army and allowing Christian missionaries. Radama's death in 1828 left no clear heir. The stage was set for a brutal struggle for succession, and Ranavalona was prepared. With the support of conservative army factions, she orchestrated a bloody purge, ordering the assassination of all potential rivals to the throne. Crowned queen, she declared her reign would uphold ancient Malagasy customs, rejecting the foreign influences of her late husband. Her first decree was a warning: let the foreigner never come to this island to spread their customs and religion. I am the law. Christian missionaries were expelled, and the practice of Christianity by Malagasys was declared a crime against the state. Those who continued to practice the new faith in secret faced persecution, becoming the first targets of her paranoia. She empowered traditional priests and diviners, using them to identify disloyalty and consolidate her rule through fear of the supernatural. To root out conspiracy, she institutionalized a brutal traditional ordeal, the trial by Tangena, or poison. The accused was forced to eat poison extracted from the Tangena nut, and then the flesh of 3 chickens. Survival depended on vomiting the poison. If the person died, they were guilty. If they lived and all 3 chickens died, they were innocent. The trials became a tool of state terror. In some years, thousands of people, nobles, commoners and rivals, died from the poison. When coastal tribes rebelled against her harsh rule and heavy taxes, her response was swift and merciless. Her armies, trained by the Europeans her husband had invited, were now used to crush internal dissent with terrifying efficiency. Captured rebels were executed en masse. One of her preferred methods was throwing them from the high cliffs surrounding her capital. She used vast slave labor, drawn from conquered populations and criminals, to build grandiose palaces and public works, with countless dying from exhaustion. Within a few years, Ranavalona had established absolute control, ruling through a combination of ancient ritual and pure terror. In 1829, a French force landed to re-establish influence, triggering a violent conflict. Her armies used guerrilla tactics and their knowledge of the terrain to harass the invaders. The French expedition was repelled, and captured soldiers were enslaved or executed, cementing her reputation as a fierce nationalist. She allowed some foreign traders to remain, but exploited them for weapons and technology while keeping them politically powerless. The persecution of Christians intensified. Many were tortured, enslaved, or executed to force them to renounce their faith. In 1849, a group of 14 Christians were thrown from the cliffs for refusing to abandon their religion, becoming martyrs. Paranoia consumed the court. No one was safe from accusation, not even her closest advisors and family members. Her own son and heir, Prince Rakoto, was suspected of sympathizing with Christians and Europeans, and was constantly watched. In 1855, a French adventurer named Joseph Lambert struck a secret deal with Prince Rakoto, promising European support in exchange for future concessions. This Lambert Charter would later be used by the French to justify their colonization of Madagascar, claiming it was legal. When Ranavalona uncovered the plot, she launched another brutal purge, executing the Malagasy conspirators. She spared her son's life, but his circle of friends and advisors was decimated, leaving him isolated and terrified. Her policies of forced labor and constant warfare led to economic decline, famine, and a significant depopulation of the island. Historians estimate that the population of Imerina may have been halved during her 33-year reign, from war, famine, and poison. In her later years, she became increasingly isolated, surrounded only by those she had terrified into absolute loyalty. She fell ill, relying on traditional healers until the very end, distrusting European medicine. Ranavalona I died in her sleep in 1861 after one of the longest and most brutal reigns in Malagasy history. Her son immediately ascended the throne as King Radama II and began reversing her policies, reopening the island to the world. Missionaries and traders flooded back in, and the persecution of Christians ceased almost overnight. Her legacy is fiercely debated. Was she a cruel tyrant or a nationalist hero who preserved Malagasy independence? Modern scholars acknowledge her role in defending sovereignty, but condemn the horrific human cost of her methods. Her primary palace, the Rova of Antananarivo, stood for centuries as a symbol of her power before burning down in 1995. In Madagascar today, her name is spoken with a mix of pride for her strength and shame for her brutality. She remains a paradox, a ruler who protected her kingdom's culture at the price of its people's lives. In the Western press, she was depicted as the ultimate savage queen, a monster who resisted civilization. She is often studied in the context of female rulers who used extreme violence to maintain power in patriarchal societies. The central question of her reign: can the preservation of cultural independence ever justify genocide and mass terror? While her numbers are lower than colonial empires, the proportional impact on Madagascar's population was catastrophic. The trial by Tangena remains the darkest symbol of her reign, a perversion of tradition into an instrument of state terror. How she is taught in Malagasy schools reflects the nation's ongoing struggle to reconcile its history of powerful sovereignty with its human cost. Her reign is a classic study in how paranoia, once institutionalized, can consume a nation from the top down. The sudden reversal of her policies after her death shows how her rule was built entirely on fear, not stability. Her resistance to foreign influence ultimately created the very pretext that France used to colonize Madagascar decades later. Her story is a haunting reminder of the extremes of nationalism and the terrible price of isolation. Ranavalona I, the Bloody Widow of Madagascar, defies easy judgment, forcing us to confront the darkest aspects of power, culture, and survival. Who do you think was history's most brutal ruler? Subscribe for more explorations of history's most compelling and dark figures.